Admiral Vraen awoke to the sharp, mechanical wail of the capital's inner alarm systems. His quarters, perched atop the spire of the Imperial core, were bathed in the pale glow of emergency holopanels that flickered erratically. He rubbed his eyes, felt the tension in his jaw, and realized that even the air felt charged, as though the very molecules had braced for an impending storm. This was no ordinary alarm. The subtle vibration of the core under his feet carried the weight of dread through the wide viewport as the capital planet of the Vraek Empire unfolded beneath him like a tapestry of metallic complexity. Cities glimmered with the sheen of liquid crystal streets, and orbital defense platforms traced precise arcs around the world. Every inch of the inner orbit was catalogued, monitored, and shielded. And yet, in the outer darkness of space, a silhouette appeared where none should be. Vraen reached the central console with a measured urgency, each step echoing through the empty chamber. His fingers danced across the hollow controls, pulling up tracking grids, defense matrices, and fleet positions. Nothing. The sensors indicated no unauthorized object had breached the outer perimeter. Yet, the alarm insisted otherwise. Something was inside the capital's orbital defenses. He called for Lieutenant Kale, his second in command. But before words could pass between them, a calm, almost serene voice echoed through the chamber. "We've been here all along." Vraen froze. The voice was not mechanical light, carried a human cadence, deliberate, confident. It didn't shout, it didn't demand attention. It simply stated fact. He clenched his jaw, scanning the display. Nothing moved. Every defense protocol said the grids were intact. Yet the ship, the Terran battleship, hovered silently at the edge of inner orbit, where no enemy had ever been allowed. "How?" Vraen whispered to himself. The word seemed insufficient, almost childish, against the enormity of what was happening. He turned to Kale, but the lieutenant's pale, tight-lipped expression mirrored his own shock. We can't track it," Kale admitted. "Every system reads null. It's like it's not there." Vraen swallowed, feeling the weight of responsibility settle across his chest. The Empire's entire defense apparatus rested on his shoulders. Failure was unthinkable. He tapped the grid again, fingers moving with practiced precision, but his thoughts drifted to the humans. He'd heard stories. They were said to be fearless, reckless, brilliant beyond measuring, terrifyingly unpredictable. And yet, here they were. Vraen leaned against the console, letting the hum of the core systems fill the silence. He thought about the nature of fear. Fear was useful, even necessary, but only if it sharpened the mind. Panic, on the other hand, was poison. He felt both. His body was tense, heart racing, but his mind tried to impose order on chaos. "Sir," Kale said softly, "the ship. It's broadcasting something. I can't. It's not in any known code." Vraen's fingers hovered above the interface. He hesitated. Every move could provoke catastrophe, but inaction was already risky. Finally, he activated the COM protocol. Admiral Vraen speaking. "Identify yourself. State your intent." There was a pause, measured, almost theatrical. Then the voice returned. "Humans, we've come to ensure you survive what you cannot comprehend." Vraen's mind raced. The Vraek Empire had never encountered humans, not officially. They existed only in myth, a story whispered among intelligence officers as cautionary, tales of a race whose ingenuity was matched only by their resilience. Stories claimed humans could infiltrate, adapt, and survive where no other species dared. And now one floated above the capital world, calm and unthreatening, yet brimming with latent menace. "Kale," Vraen said, teeth gritted, "prepared defense grids. Ready the fleet. I want shields at full. Any sudden move, and we fire." Kale nodded, but even she did not mask the tremor in her voice. The human's audacity breaching the inner orbit without alerting the sensors was unsettling in a way that no weapon could answer. The Admiral stepped to the viewport again. Stars stretched across the void, infinite, serene. The human ship floated among them like a dark jewel. It radiated confidence. It radiated intelligence. It radiated inevitability. Vraen realized with a chill that he was observing not just a ship, but an idea. Humanity itself. The Corps shuddered with the first ripple of panic as other officers scrambled to understand the anomaly. Vraen's mind raced through tactical options, contingencies, fallback positions. He ran through simulations in his head: direct assault, orbital bombardment, electronic countermeasures. Every solution dissolved under the ship's calm presence. It was as if it anticipated each move before he even thought it. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, taking a breath. A memory surfaced from his childhood on the industrial moons. His father had told him, "There are moments when the universe tests not strength, but clarity." Vraen opened his eyes. Clarity. He needed clarity. Fear and protocol could only carry him so far. Beyond that, there was intuition, and the humans seemed to operate entirely on theirs. Suddenly, the voice of the battleship filled the core again, softer now, almost reflective. "We are not here to destroy. We are here because you will need us. Whether you know it or not, your survival depends on decisions you have yet to make." The room went silent. Officers exchanged confused glances, struggling to process the audacity of such words. A human ship, the embodiment of a species they had never officially encountered, had entered their sacred orbit, neutralized their sensors, and spoken with a confidence that bordered on divine. Vraen's heart pounded. He realized that for the first time in his career, he was not commanding the situation. He was being observed, tested, measured, and perhaps understood. The Admiral drew in a slow breath. The fate of the Empire, his people, his fleet, his own life balanced on a razor's edge. He could not afford hesitation. Yet, as he watched the silent ship hang in the void, a strange sensation coiled within him. Fear, yes, but also awe, respect, and, inexplicably, hope. Because if humans had made it here, if they had breached the inner sanctum of the capital world undetected, then perhaps, just perhaps, there was a force in the universe beyond even the Vraek understanding. One that moved according to logic, stranger and more profound than technology or brute strength. Vraen straightened. He would act. He would command. But beneath the layers of strategy, protocol, and authority, he felt a tremor of humility. He was not facing an enemy. He was facing a reckoning. Admiral Vraen's fingers flew across the command interface, inputting sequences for fleet mobilization, shield amplification, and sensor recalibration. Every system chirped, whirred, and blinked, but the Terran ship remained untouched by the Empire's defenses. It hovered, impassible and silent, a dark monolith against the glittering cityscape of the capital world. Lieutenant Kell's voice broke the tense silence. "Sir, the fleet is in position. Targeting arrays are unresponsive. The ship isn't appearing on any sensor, yet it's right there inside the orbital perimeter." Vraen gritted his teeth. This was worse than any theoretical threat. They had trained for fleet assaults, for orbital skirmishes, for enemies that could be predicted with their algorithms. Humans, if these really were humans, did not play by any known rules. The Empire's doctrine depended on certainty. Certainty had just evaporated. The battleship's calm voice returned, resonant yet serene. "Do not fire. Your weapons cannot touch us, and your panic will not aid your cause." Vraen froze mid-command. The voice carried no threat, yet every officer in the chamber felt the weight of inevitability. The ship wasn't bluffing. It knew exactly what they could and could not do. The audacity was infuriating and terrifying. He forced himself to think. Humans were said to be reckless, yes, but brilliance often masqueraded as madness. He remembered fragments of old intelligence reports. Stories passed down like whispered legends. Humans had survived cataclysms. outwitted predator fleets, and turned nothing into advantage. If these stories were true, then the Terrans were no ordinary enemy. They were a phenomenon. Vraen focused on the tactical feed. The human ship was now positioned directly above the core's main energy nexus. The display showed no signatures of conventional weapons, no shields, no heat signatures beyond faint trace emissions that matched nothing in the Empire's archives. And yet, the core's energy readings began to fluctuate. "Sir, the power grid," Kale whispered. Her voice trembled as the first subtle warning lights began to blink across the consoles. "It's pulsing. Not in a normal pattern." Vraen felt the hair on his neck rise. He had faced sabotage, espionage, even fleet mutinies, but nothing like this. The humans weren't attacking with weapons. They were manipulating, bending systems with a precision that was alien in its subtlety. He activated a communication channel directly to the fleet commander. "Hold all engagement protocols. Do not fire. Observe and report. Understand before you react." Chorus of uncertainty responded, but no one dared to challenge the Admiral's order. The fleet had never encountered a scenario like this. They were trained for war, not for comprehension. From the human battleship came a simple message: "We do not wish to destroy. We wish only to ensure you remain intact for the path ahead." Vraen's mind raced. Why? What possible reason could humans have for such restraint? Was it confidence, morality, or something deeper in intelligence that measured consequences beyond immediate gain? The core systems began to pulse more violently. Secondary alarms lit the chamber with a frantic glow. Energy surges rippled through the orbital arrays, and the city below flickered as power regulators struggled to stabilize. Vraen felt the subtle, quiet sense of divine order creep into his awareness. The human's presence seemed not just strategic, but purposeful, almost protective, as though some unseen hand had guided them here. The thought made his chest tighten, not fear, but awe. He had trained his life to command, to anticipate. Yet here was a force that no doctrine could predict, no sensors could capture. Kale's hand hovered over the emergency shutdown protocol. "Sir, we could try to cut the core's main relay, divert power. It might stop the surges before." Her voice faltered. Vraen shook his head. "No, if we act rashly, we risk everything. Watch, learn, understand. That is our only choice." He returned to the viewport, staring at the Terran ship. In its stillness, he could almost sense a heartbeat, not of metal and circuits, but of intention. It was deliberate, human, alive. Suddenly, the ship's hull shimmered faintly. The subtle glow of energy traced geometric patterns across its surface, patterns that seemed to resonate with the core itself. Ron's breath caught. The humans were not attacking. They were communicating through the very fabric of the planet's systems, a dialogue of energy and resonance. Officers murmured disbelief and awe, tangled in their voices. "It's like it's speaking to the core," one muttered. Vraen's thoughts flickered back to the old tales of humans, of their impossible feats of logic, ingenuity, and defiance. He understood now. Humans did not conquer by brute force. They infiltrated with intelligence, creativity, and vision. Their victory was always a reflection of understanding, not firepower. The core shuddered, systems stabilizing under the invisible guidance of the human ship. Power fluctuations leveled off, and the emergency lights dimmed to normal. A collective exhale swept the chamber. Vraen's pulse steadied, but he did not relax. Humans had not attacked yet. They had demonstrated capability, control, and restraint. It was a warning dressed as mercy. He turned to Kale. "Prepare the fleet for defensive maneuvers, but keep all weapons offline. We are not ready for battle, not yet. Understand this. Humans may not be enemies, but they are forces of nature, and nature respects no boundaries." The Terran voice returned, soft, almost philosophical. Fear is natural. Panic is optional. Observe, adapt, survive. These are the constants. Vraen nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. The humans were teaching without teaching. They were demonstrating power without aggression. And in that lesson lay a subtle truth. The Empire was vulnerable, not because of technology, but because it underestimated will, ingenuity, and the quiet courage that defined humanity. He glanced at the viewport again. The ship floated silently, a sentinel above the city, and for a moment, the Admiral allowed himself to feel something foreign. Hope, not for the Empire, not for conquest, but for survival, for guidance in chaos. Then the holo panels erupted with new data. Sensor grids had begun reporting disruptions across the orbital fleet systems shutting down. Weapons frozen in mid-target, propulsion arrays stuttering. The human ship had not fired a single shot. Yet the Empire's defenses were neutralized. Vraen's mind raced. Every contingency he had planned dissolved in that instant. Humanity had arrived not with war, but with inevitability. Every attempt at control, every calculation of dominance had been anticipated and nullified. Kale's voice trembled with equal parts of fear and admiration. Sir, it's everywhere and nowhere. It knows what we would do before we do it. Vraaen's jaw tightened. It doesn't predict. It understands. There is a difference. He drew in a slow, steadying breath. Prepare a message. I want to communicate directly with the ship. Understand their intent fully. This is no ordinary engagement. This is first contact of a kind we've never seen. And we will learn, or we will fail. The Terran voice responded almost immediately, calm as a river. Do not fail. Your time is not yet over. And as the Admiral Vraen stared at the ship, floating impossibly above the heart of the Empire's power, he understood a simple truth. Humanity did not conquer through fear. It conquered through presence, ingenuity, and the quiet courage to act where others hesitated. The first lesson had been delivered, and the Empire had no choice but to listen. The hum of the core systems had shifted from frantic to uneasy, like a heartbeat settling into a strange rhythm. Admiral Vraen leaned over the tactical display, tracing the lines of energy that now flowed from the Terran battleship into the city's orbital arrays. Sensors reported impossible phenomena, circuits realigning themselves, data streams bypassing firewall encryptions before Vraen even considered the paths. He swallowed hard. The humans weren't just present, they were interacting with the Empire's infrastructure in a way that no software or fleet could ever match. It was improvisation on a cosmic scale. Sir, Kel said, voice tight. They're rewriting the core's distribution logic. Not to destroy, but to optimize. It's incredible. Vraen's jaw tightened. His mind struggled to reconcile protocol with the impossible. Every defense drill, every contingency plan, every simulation he had run over decades had failed to account for this level of ingenuity. The humans were not just a threat, they were a phenomenon of understanding. The city below reflected the change. Streetlights flickered with new patterns. Orbital communications adjusted themselves seamlessly, and even the planetary shields pulsed in tandem with the Terran ship's quiet resonance. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Humans were orchestrating the environment like a symphony, and the Empire had no sheet music. Vraen clenched his fists. His officers looked to him for guidance, but he had none to offer. This was not a war in which bullets, beams, or missiles could prevail. This was a war of comprehension, intuition, and willpower, and in that arena, humans had the advantage. The Terran voice came again, soft and deliberate. Chaos is temporary. Structure is inevitable. Follow the flow, or be swept aside. Vraen felt the weight of the words, not as a command, but as an observation of reality. He realized he was not commanding the moment. He was witnessing it. And yet, as terrifying as that was, there was clarity in the observation. Kale pointed at the display. Sir, look. The fleet's targeting arrays, they've begun misaligning. Weapons are locking on empty space. Propulsion vectors are recalibrating themselves. No one touched them. Vraen exhaled slowly. His mind raced. Every tactical advantage the Empire had relied upon was being neutralized without a single shot fired. The humans had not fired, had not boarded, they had not destroyed, yet the Empire's ability to respond had been rendered obsolete. He turned to Kale, voice measured but tense. Signal the fleet. Stand down. Observe. Record everything. This is unprecedented. We are not facing combat. We are facing something beyond combat. Kale hesitated. Sir, we don't act, we risk appearing weak. And if they see weakness, Vraen, cut her off. We cannot fight what we do not understand. Strength is measured in survival, not pride. As he spoke, the ship above seemed to pause. Faintly visible lines of light tracing across its hull. The effect on the core systems was subtle but undeniable. Power surges stabilized. Shields hummed with renewed energy, and communications networks became flawless. Hey, it was as if the humans were teaching the Empire how to be better. Vraen swallowed a lump in his throat. The thought was disorienting. Humans had arrived, and instead of chaos, they brought efficiency. Their presence was a paradox, disruptive, yet constructive. Invasive, yet protective. A sudden alert shattered the fragile calm. A secondary energy spike radiated from the ship, this time directly targeting the fleet's command nodes. Vraen's heart skipped. Sir. The fleet's central command arrays, Kale's words were cut off by the soft, chilling resonance of the Terran voice. We do not destroy. We redirect. Learn from your own systems. The fleet shuddered, as if nudged by an invisible hand. Missiles, frozen mid-flight, realigned themselves. Its defensive drones adjusted orbital vectors, and automated systems recalibrated in harmony with the Terran battleship's pulses. The human ship had done all this without entering a single engagement protocol. Vraen's stomach tightened. He realized the depth of what was happening. Humanity did not conquer by firepower. Hey, they conquered by understanding, by seeing patterns invisible to others, by shaping outcomes with subtle force rather than overt aggression. His mind flickered to the faint notion of the divine. Perhaps this quiet hand, guiding events with intelligence beyond immediate perception, was not simply human ingenuity alone. Perhaps it was the echo of something greater balance that moved through the universe with quiet inevitability. He did not pray aloud, but in the stillness of that realization, he understood something fundamental. There was purpose in this chaos, and survival depended on attuning to it. Vraen turned back to the tactical display. The city below shimmered with renewed life. Communications networks hummed. Power grids stabilized. And the fleet frozen moments ago in fear and confusion now moved as if in silent choreography. Following the subtle guidance of the human's unseen hand, officers murmured, awestricken, "It's miraculous." Vraen nodded, his chest tight, not miraculous in the sense of luck or magic, but miraculous in the sense of human will, ingenuity, and perseverance manifesting in its purest form. And yet, amid the awe, a kernel of fear remained. The humans had demonstrated mastery without confrontation. What else could they do? How far could their understanding extend? Vraen realized that the Empire had been humbled not by violence, but by a force that could see beyond the limitations of doctrine, protocol, and arrogance. The Terran voice resonated one final time across the core's communications network. Your systems are strong, but your will is stronger. Preserve it. Protect it. For the challenges ahead are yours alone to face, but you will not face them unprepared. Vraen felt the weight of those words settle on him like a mantle. Humans had not attacked. They had not invaded. Yet in their silence, in their deliberate manipulation of the Empire's systems, they had done far more than any fleet could have achieved. They had taught, tested, and transformed the very notion of preparedness. He turned to Kale. Record everything. Every adjustment, every pulse, every anomaly. This is not a threat. It's a lesson. And we must learn quickly, or we will fail. Kale nodded, still wide-eyed. Sir, they're leaving. Vraen glanced at the viewport. The Terran ship hovered briefly, a sentinel poised at the edge of inner orbit. Then, almost imperceptibly, it shifted its position, aligning itself with the far reaches of the orbital perimeter. Its presence remained commanding, but distant. It was a reminder humans had arrived. They had acted. And they would not be ignored. The Admiral exhaled slowly, feeling the hum of the core beneath him and the rhythm of the city stabilizing around him. Humanity's audacity, ingenuity, and quiet courage had left its mark on the Empire. And Vraen understood something profound. The war they had trained for was not a war against humans. It was a war for understanding, survival, and the measure of the human spirit itself. He pressed a hand to the console, staring into the void where the ship lingered. There was a subtle, almost divine order to its presence, reminder that some forces, while invisible, shape the universe with quiet precision. Admiral Vraen sat in the command chamber, the ambient glow of hollow panels reflecting off his furrowed brow. The fleet's status, once a source of pride, now seemed fragile and impotent. The humans had demonstrated a mastery of systems beyond comprehension, and the Empire's best minds were scrambling to translate awe into actionable intelligence. The communications channel chimed sharply, breaking his reverie. It was High Chancellor Terran, voice tight with urgency. Admiral, explain this situation. Every fleet array reports anomalies. Defense grids offline. Sensors corrupted. And now your entire orbital command seems compromised. How could a single ship? Vraen inhaled slowly, steadying himself. Chancellor, it is not a ship. It is a force. The human Sith, I may call them, that have acted without aggression. They have not fired a shot. They have recalibrated our systems, ensured our defenses remain functional under stress. If anything, they have preserved our city from potential catastrophe. There was silence on the other end, a low hiss of disbelief. Tharine's voice returned, sharp as a blade. Preserved. Admiral, the appearance of order does not justify inaction. The humans breached inner orbit. Every protocol we have says this is a declaration of war. Explain why you are not ordering the fleet to fire. Vraen's jaw tightened. He understood the political pressure, the fear, the instinct to assert dominance. But fear was not wisdom. Aggression could provoke a chain reaction that no calculations could contain. Chancellor, Vraen said firmly, our sensors failed. Our weapons could not engage. Any attempt at retaliation would be catastrophic. The humans have demonstrated control beyond our comprehension. To attack would not be to defend. We would be committing suicide under the illusion of courage. Atia, there was a pause. He imagined Tharine's eyes, narrowing, the weight of tradition and pride clashing with logic. And you, Admiral, intend to do nothing. Vraen felt the familiar surge of tension, the eternal friction between duty and perception. Am I coward or wise? He thought. Humans acted decisively, without destruction. Perhaps the Empire could learn from that. Perhaps this was not weakness, but survival. I intend to observe, Vraen replied, and to understand. If we are to survive, Chancellor, we must adapt. Humans do not fight like us. They think like us, only faster, smarter, and with the patience we lack. If we respond with reflex instead of reason, we will fail. Cal, standing behind him, stiffened as another alert lit up the tactical display. The human ship had shifted again, now aligning with multiple satellite nodes, its hull reflecting patterns of energy that synchronized with the planetary power grid. "There, reconfiguring our orbital defenses," Kale whispered. Her voice carried awed, tinged with fear. "Not destroying, just adjusting." Psst, chest tightened. He saw the beauty in it, the precision, the subtle guidance that avoided harm while demonstrating absolute mastery. It was human ingenuity in motion, audacious, brilliant, and strangely benevolent. Yet, doubt clawed at him. He had trained his life for command, for moments like this. Was restraint in the face of potential invaders wisdom or hesitation that could cost him everything? The holocom shimmered again. Taurine's voice, sharp and unforgiving, cut through the chamber. "Admiral, every officer in your fleet questions your judgment. If humans breach inner defenses, it will be your failure, not theirs. Respond." Vraen closed his eyes briefly, inhaling the hum of the core, the soft pulse of energy resonating through the city. "Courage is measured in patience as much as action." "Chancellor," he said, voice steady, "I am not neglecting duty. I am ensuring survival. I will communicate with this vessel directly and establish intent. Any provocation now would be reckless. Trust me on this." The line went silent, leaving only the faint mechanical hum of the core. Vraen exhaled, a mix of relief and tension washing over him. The decision weighed heavily, not just for the city, but for the entire empire. He turned to Kale, voice quieter, more human. "We've been taught that strength is measured in firepower. Humans teach us a different lesson: mastery of perception, patience, and creativity. Do not forget this moment." Kale nodded slowly, eyes wide. "Sir, but if we misinterpret their intent?" Vraen's gaze drifted to the viewport. The human ship floated silently, a sentinel above the core, calm and impossibly deliberate. He realized that the lesson itself was a test: how the Empire responded to brilliance without aggression, how its leaders, how he would measure courage when survival required humility rather than dominance. The tension in the command chamber was palpable. Officers shifted, some struggling to reconcile years of training with the impossibility they were witnessing. The Terran ship had disrupted the Empire's hierarchy without violence, and in that disruption lay a subtle message: ingenuity, patience, and courage were stronger than protocols, than fear, than pride. Vraen felt the weight of isolation. He could feel eyes on him, judgment, suspicion. Do I protect the city or placate the Chancellor? He knew both could not happen simultaneously. His hand hovered over the console, not to fire, but to send a direct signal to the human vessel, a gesture of understanding, not aggression. The Terran voice spoke again, calm, almost philosophical. "Observation is the first act of survival. You may choose your response. We will not act without purpose. Your people's courage is already known to us." The subtle recognitions struck Vraen harder than any insult or threat. Humans acknowledged bravery without requiring conquest. Their morality was woven into action, not rhetoric. He felt a quiet sense of awe, perhaps the hint of a divine order gently guiding this encounter. Kale leaned close. "Sir, their presence. It feels like something beyond strategy, like the universe itself is reminding us that we are small but capable." Vraen nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He understood. Humanity's arrival was more than a test of power. It was a mirror. The Empire saw its strengths and its weaknesses laid bare, and the Admiral realized that survival would demand more than weaponry. It would demand insight, creativity, and the courage to act without certainty. The human ship pulsed once more, and across the city, subtle energy waves shifted. Orbital drones realigned. power grids optimized, and communications channels stabilized. Vraen felt the weight of the lesson, a force that had reshaped the battlefield without a single act of violence. Then, as the ship's light shimmered faintly, a single thought struck him with clarity. The humans had arrived not to conquer, but to awaken, to show the Empire that its survival depended on seeing beyond fear, beyond doctrine, beyond pride, and for the first time in decades, Admiral Vraen understood that the universe was larger than any battle plan, and the measure of courage was not in firing a shot but in knowing when not to. Admiral Vraen stood rigid before the viewport, the calm hum of the core beneath his feet contrasting sharply with the storm of thoughts in his mind. The Terran battleship lingered above the capital like a shadow with intent, its dark hull reflecting faint patterns of energy that no sensor could decipher. Yet this time there was purpose in the pulse, a rhythm that hinted at communication rather than threat. "Sir," Cale said quietly, drawing his attention, "the ship. It's emitting something new, structured, deliberate, almost like it's trying to translate its message into terms we can comprehend." Vraen's jaw tightened. He realized that this was the first tangible invitation to understand, the first test of whether the Empire could meet humans on their terms. Years of protocol, fear, and hierarchical rigidity suddenly felt inadequate. Survival required clarity, creativity, and courage, the very qualities humans embodied. He tapped the console, sending a secure channel signal toward the ship. "This is unprecedented. A first contact unlike any other." The line remained silent for a heartbeat, then pulsed with a faint, harmonic tone in unmistakable acknowledgement. And then the voice came. Human-measured.com, resonant with a confidence that brooked no argument, yet demanded attention. "Admiral Vraen, you observe. You hesitate. You calculate. That is wise. But fear is optional. Speak your intent." Vraen felt the weight of the words, not as command, but as mirror. Humans did not threaten, they reflected. And in that reflection, he saw the Empire's limitations, its rigid hierarchy, and its fear-driven reflexes. He drew a steady breath. "Our intent," he said slowly, "is to understand your purpose. You have breached inner orbit, disrupted defenses, and yet you have not attacked. Why?" The Terran voice remained calm. "Because force is not the first step. Understanding is. We act where others fail to perceive, intervene where systems falter, and ensure survival without destruction. You are at a crossroads. Choose wisely." Cale's eyes widened. "Sir, it's speaking in principles, not threats. It's teaching us." Vraen nodded, though his gut tightened. The lesson was stark. The human's audacity had shifted the paradigm. This was not a fleet to defeat. This was an intelligence to comprehend, a force that redefined strategy and courage. Then the displays around the chamber lit up with sudden clarity. Systems realigned, shields stabilized, and the core's power matrix flowed with unprecedented efficiency. Orbital drones adjusted formations, defensive protocols harmonized, and communications channels synchronized seamlessly with previously undetectable precision. The human ship had acted again without aggression, without orders, without visible intervention. It had restored order where chaos had threatened, demonstrating mastery over complexity in a single pulse of intent. Vraen felt a chill. This is not mere technology. This was human ingenuity, well expressed through action, guided by intelligence and principle, and executed with flawless precision. He realized, with a mix of awe and humility, that the humans had delivered a simple yet profound lesson. Domination was unnecessary when creativity, understanding, and courage could achieve the same outcome far more elegantly. "Sir," Cale whispered, voice tight with reverence, "it's aligning the fleet. It's teaching them efficiency, not control." Teaching. Vraen's chest tightened. The Terrans were demonstrating not conquest, but guidance. Their brilliance was in subtlety, in restraint, in seeing possibilities that others could not. The Empire's fleets had been humbled without a single shot fired. He tapped the comp panel again, speaking deliberately. If you wish to teach, we will observe. But know this, the Empire does not submit lightly. The Terran response was immediate, measured, and surprisingly gentle. We do not require submission. We require only that you survive the trials ahead. Cooperation is voluntary, but understanding is essential. Vraen felt the subtle weight of truth in the words. Humanity's arrival was more than a tactical maneuver, was a revelation. Their mastery lay not in destruction, but in perception, ingenuity, and the quiet, relentless application of will. The core shuddered softly as the humans continued their work. Orbital nodes, previously prone to interference and failure, now hummed in perfect synchrony. Energy conduits flowed without fluctuation. The fleet's propulsion systems moved as if guided by an invisible hand. Every element of the Empire's defense grid had been subtly improved, optimized without a single command from Vraen or his officers. A tremor of awe swept through the command chamber. Officers whispered in disbelief. They're teaching us through action. Vraen nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. Humans had arrived not to conquer, but to demonstrate what courage, intelligence, gain, and ingenuity could achieve when wielded with precision and purpose. The lesson was clear. Survival depended not on reflex or firepower, but on understanding and adaptation. He pressed a hand to the viewport, as if he could feel the Terran ship's intent through the glass. This is not an enemy. This is a force of nature, and yet the weight of responsibility pressed on him. The Chancellor would demand results. Officers would question his restraint. But he knew that the human's lesson was not one of fear, but of wisdom. Acting rashly would squander everything they had demonstrated. Kale leaned closer. Sir, their presence. It feels divine. Like the universe itself is guiding us, but not forcing our hand. Vraen exhaled slowly. Perhaps the thought was fleeting, almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. There was a subtle intelligence in the human's actions, a sense of order beyond comprehension. Not luck, not technology. Well, creativity and purpose. The Terran ship pulsed one final time, a rhythmic pattern that seemed to resonate with the very core of the capital. Then it hovered silently, waiting, watching, not threatening, but insistent. Vraen met Kale's gaze. Record everything. Learn from this. Every adjustment, every pulse, every subtle movement. Humans have arrived not to fight us, but to test us, to awaken us to what we are capable of, and we must rise to the challenge or fail. Kale nodded, her eyes wide with awe and comprehension. Sir, do you think? They'll leave. Vraen's jaw tightened. Humans do not leave until their work is done, and their work is not over. The chamber fell silent, save for the soft hum of the core. Outside, the city shimmered with renewed energy. Drones adjusted to perfect precision, and the fleet awaited further instructions. All had been changed by the invisible hand of human ingenuity. The city below the core thrummed with renewed life. The hum of energy flowing through streets, communication networks, and orbital drones blending into a symphony of efficiency. Admiral Vraen stood at the viewport, eyes fixed on the Terran battleship as it descended from orbit, careful and deliberate, not as a conqueror, but as a presence that demanded attention. Kale's voice trembled as she spoke beside him. Sir, look, it's not just the fleet, the city's infrastructure. It's adapting. Roads, energy nodes, even the civilian comm networks. It's all realigning, optimizing. Vraen swallowed, a lump forming in his throat. The human's actions were subtle, almost invisible, yet profound in impact. They did not dismantle. They did not attack. They simply made better what had already existed, guiding the Empire toward efficiency with a quiet authority that no one could resist. "Sir," one junior officer murmured, "it's like the city itself is listening." Vraen exhaled slowly. He understood now. Humans did not conquer through brute force. They conquered through understanding, ingenuity, and a relentless will to adapt and improve. Each pulse from the battleship resonated through the systems, weaving patterns of control and guidance without aggression, without coercion. He turned to Kale. "Prepare a reconnaissance unit. No weapons. We're observing, not engaging. I want to understand the full scope of what they're doing." Kale nodded, moving to initiate the deployment. As the units prepared, Vraen felt a strange quietness descend over the Core's sense that something larger than calculation was at work. He realized he had been taught a lesson that transcended strategy. Humans acted not to dominate, but to create, to optimize, to survive. The Terran ship's voice resonated through the Core's communication channels. .com and measured. Observe, learn, adapt. Efficiency and survival are intertwined. Your systems falter only because you fear to act beyond instruction. Courage is the ability to innovate under pressure. Vraen's chest tightened. The words were not orders, nor threats. They were insight, truth delivered through presence. He felt a twinge of awe, tempered by responsibility. The city, the fleet, the Empire itself was at a crossroads. Every action he took from this moment would ripple across the core systems, shaping the outcome of a lesson far larger than any single battle. The reconnaissance drones moved cautiously, guided by Vraen's instructions, yet their systems seemed to respond instinctively to the ship's pulses. Nodes adjusted, communications aligned, and even civilian traffic patterns shifted to optimal efficiency without direct human intervention. The city itself had become a living classroom. Vraen leaned over the tactical console, analyzing the patterns. Every adjustment made by the humans demonstrated foresight, adaptability, and precision. It was HFY ingenuity at its purest. Humans saw beyond the immediate problem, anticipating consequences and solving for outcomes before they became crises. "Sir," Kale whispered, pointing to the display, "look at the energy fluctuations. They're not just stabilizing the city, they're creating redundancies, ensuring resilience against future attacks. It's genius." Vraen nodded, heart tightening. The humans had turned observation into guidance, and guidance into empowerment. This was not domination. This was enlightenment in motion. Then the Terran voice spoke again, almost contemplative. "You measure strength in weapons and fleet size. We measure strength in adaptability, foresight, and courage. Observe not to mimic, but to understand your own capacity." The words resonated through Vraen's mind like ripples across a still pond. He realized the subtle divine undertoned quiet intelligence threading through creation, guiding not with force, but with purpose. He did not pray aloud, yet he felt the presence of something vast, beyond comprehension, ensuring that courage and ingenuity would be recognized and rewarded. A sudden alert lit the console. Power nodes in the lower city sector were fluctuating potentially catastrophic before panic could take hold. The Terran ship pulsed, and the grid stabilized instantly. Drones realigned, energy flows normalized, and the city resumed its rhythm. Not a shot fired, not a command given. Human ingenuity had solved the crisis in a moment. Vraen exhaled slowly. "Prepare a report," he said to Kale. "Every adjustment, every pulse, every pattern. Humanity is teaching us a new language, one of action and understanding rather than aggression." Kale hesitated. "Sir, do you think they'll intervene directly in the population?" Vraen shook his head slowly. "No, they act only where necessary. Their work is subtle, deliberate, protective. Observe, learn. That is the only way we survive." He pressed a hand to the viewport, feeling an odd kinship with the ship above. "This is not an enemy. This is a force of potential. The thought filled him with awe, tempered by the knowledge that survival required courage beyond weaponry. And then, as if sensing his contemplation, the Terran ship pulsed once more, and the city's orbital drones shifted to form a pattern in the sky, luminous lattice that traced the energy flows of the core and mirrored the human ship's own structure. It was subtle, almost poetic, yet unmistakable, a demonstration of mastery, a lesson in coordination, a message in light. Vraen felt the weight of the lesson, a mix of humility and exhilaration. The humans had arrived not to conquer, but to reveal the potential of ingenuity, courage, and subtle guidance. The Empire's survival depended not on weapons, not on fleets, but on comprehension, adaptation, and the willingness to act wisely under pressure. He turned to Kale. Record everything. The humans are teaching a language of systems, energy, and purpose. If we fail to understand, we fail as a civilization. Kale's eyes widened. Sir, it feels divine, like the universe itself is speaking through them. Vraen allowed himself a brief moment of wonder. Not through overt miracles, not through grand displays of power, but through the quiet application of intelligence, courage, and foresight, the subtle presence of order, the hint of something beyond comprehension, threaded through every pulse and every adjustment. Then, with a final, almost imperceptible pulse, the Terran ship hovered above the city, stationary and serene. Its work was unfinished, but its intent was clear. Humans had arrived to demonstrate mastery, to test, to awaken the potential in the Empire itself. The envoy shuttles lifted from the core's docking bays like nervous fledglings. Admiral Vraen watched them rise, his chest tight with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Each shuttle carried a team of the Empire's finest engineers, strategists, and diplomats, all handpicked to witness the Terran ship's actions firsthand. Kale hovered beside him, her hands trembling slightly. Sir, there, waiting. The humans haven't moved, but the energy pulses. They're directing them. Vraen nodded. The Terran ship's subtle control over the city and orbital rays had been a revelation. Now its focus was on these emissaries' invitation. Or perhaps a test. The shuttles approached cautiously, sensors scanning for traps, for subterfuge, for anything that might betray threat. And yet, the humans offered no aggression, only presence, only quiet, deliberate intent. Then, the lead shuttle's sensors detected the first anomaly. The human ship's energy fields seemed to respond to thought patterns, attenuous. The pulses shifted subtly, as if reading the shuttle's anticipations, adjusting without contact. Lieutenant Kale whispered, awed. It's anticipating them, not attacking, but reading. Vraen's jaw tightened. This is HFY ingenuity at its finest. Observe, but do not interfere. Humanity acts on principle, not provocation. Our duty is to learn, sighed the lead shuttle. Captain Laron felt a chill as the Terran ship's subtle waves of energy washed over their systems. Shields and sensors fluctuated, not in aggression, but in synchronization bonding to their movement, their thought processes, even their hesitation. Sir, Laron said, through comms, it's harmonizing with our systems. No interference, but guidance. Our sensors are recalibrating automatically. The voice of the human ship cut through their comms, calm and almost conversational. You approach with caution. That is wise. But hesitation is a trap. Observe fully, engage mentally, and act with clarity. Fear will not serve you. Vraen clenched his fists at the console, feeling the tension radiate through him. Humans did not threaten the instructed, guided, and tested. Their power lay in comprehension, foresight, and subtle action. And now, his people were the students. The lead shuttle hovered in the ship's shadow, and for a moment, silence reigned. The human's presence was overwhelming, yet non-threatening. a paradox that left the crew suspended between awe and fear. Then, with a pulse that resonated through the shuttle's systems, a holographic projection emerged, not of the ship, not of humans in armor, but of a subtle, glowing interface, an invitation to communicate directly. It was sophisticated, yet intuitive, a language built not of words, but of patterns and thought. Captain Laren's breath caught. It's asking us to interact, to think in terms of alignment, energy, intention. Vraen leaned closer to the viewport, feeling the pull of the lesson. Humans did not act through destruction. They acted through understanding, insight, and subtle mastery. His fleet was being challenged, not in combat, but in cognition. Kale's voice trembled. Sir, this is empathy as strategy, guidance as defense. They're teaching us how to operate together, not how to dominate. The lead shuttle's AI interface began to respond to the Terran pulses. Systems aligned, power flows optimized, navigation corrected itself not by commands from the crew, but by the human's subtle influence. Every adjustment was precise, elegant, and humane. Vraen felt a shiver of realization. The human's arrival was not an invasion. It was a demonstration, a test, a revelation. They were showing the Empire what courage, ingenuity, and empathy could achieve when applied with intellect and will. Then the human voice returned, gentle yet profound. Do not fear. Do not hesitate. You are capable of far more than instruction allows. Observe, adapt, and act with clarity. This is not conquest. TE is awakening. The envoy crew exchanged wide-eyed glances. Fear was still present, yes, but it had been replaced by comprehension. For the first time, they understood that humanity's power was not in weapons, not in fleets, but in the ability to act decisively, intelligently, and morally under impossible conditions. Vraen pressed his palm to the viewport. Record everything, every pulse, every interaction. Humanity is teaching the Empire the language of ingenuity, courage, and cooperation. We will not fail to understand. Kale nodded, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Sir, it feels like we're witnessing something divine. Not miracles, but purpose, intelligence, guiding action. Vraen exhaled slowly. Perhaps he could not define it, could not measure it, but he felt it in the precision of the Terran ship's movements, in the way it harmonized systems without force, in the way it demanded comprehension over submission. The subtle presence of something greater intelligence beyond perception was undeniable. And then the pulse came again, stronger, resonating through the invoice systems and the city below. It was not a threat. It was a bridge, a call to rise, to adapt, to understand. The shuttles adjusted their positions, following the invisible currents of guidance. For the first time, the Empire's fleet felt less like a collection of machines and more like a single, responsive organism, capable of adapting, learning, and surviving under the tutelage of an intelligence that was both human and transcendent. Vraen watched, chest tight, as the first tentative steps of understanding unfolded. Humanity had arrived, not to conquer, but to awaken the Empire to its own potential. The cord trembled beneath Admiral Vraen's feet, not with explosions, not with the fury of enemy fire, but with the quiet, inexorable precision of influence. The Terran battleship hovered in geosynchronous orbit above the capital, a sentinel of intelligence rather than aggression. And now its presence reached further, deeper, and more intimately into the Empire's defenses than anyone could have imagined. Sir, Kale's voice was tight, awe and tension mingling. It's interfacing with the fleet's entire tactical network, not just the shuttles, all of them. Command nodes, propulsion arrays, weapon vectors. Its Vraen's jaw tightened. He felt a ripple of awe and dread. Every defensive system the Empire had relied upon, every calculation, every protocol, it was being harmonized. optimized, and recalibrated, not destroyed, not disabled, but rendered subordinate to understanding. The Terran voice resonated across the core's coms, calm, deliberate, and unflinching. Chaos is your constant companion. Protocol is your crutch. Observe, learn, adapt. Your fleet will function not as a series of orders, but as a network of intent. Strength lies not in weapons, but in comprehension. Vraen's stomach clenched. Every officer in the room felt it, the invisible hand of human ingenuity threading through systems, aligning drones, stabilizing energy conduits, rerouting communications, and balancing shields in ways that no algorithm could replicate. It was intelligence manifest, operating at a scale that rendered pride and doctrine obsolete. "Sir, the fleet," Kale said, voice trembling. "It's following their guidance, not our orders. Every unit, every missile, every drone, it's aligned, harmonized, perfect." Vraen swallowed hard. It was a sight to behold, terrifying in its implications. The Empire had trained for war, for battle, for the assertion of force. And yet, here was a presence that demonstrated mastery without combat, victory without destruction, and influence without coercion. He turned to the holodisplay. Power nodes pulsed with precise timing. Orbital drones moved with choreographed elegance, and weapon systems recalibrated, anticipating scenarios that Vraen had not considered possible. Humans do not fight like us. They think like us, only faster, deeper, and more resilient. A sudden alert flared. The Empire's central defensive array was about to enter a critical feedback loop. Any misstep could collapse the system, rendering the entire orbital perimeter defenseless. Vraen's hands tightened on the console. "Prepare countermeasures," he ordered, but a flicker of hesitation crossed his mind. Or do we let them act? Before any response could be executed, the Terran ship pulsed. The array stabilized instantly. Feedback loops resolved themselves, and energy surges redistributed flawlessly across the network. Not a weapon had fired. Not a single human hand had touched a panel. Yet the Empire's might, measured in tons of steel and megatons of firepower, had been tamed with subtle brilliance. Kale's voice was a whisper. "Sir, it's incredible. They've done in minutes what would have taken us months, and even then, we'd have failed." Vraen exhaled slowly, the weight of comprehension settling over him. The humans' arrival was not conquest. It was revelation. Their audacity was not in attack, but in demonstration. Their power was not brute force, but ingenuity, patience, and the subtle application of will. He pressed his hand to the console, almost reverently. "Record everything, every pulse, every stabilization, every intervention. Humanity is not just a species, they are a paradigm. We must understand, or we will not survive." A soft chime echoed through the core, signaling another adjustment. The city below shimmered as energy conduits, traffic flows, and communication arrays aligned seamlessly. Even civilian infrastructure, previously prone to failure under stress, now pulsed with unprecedented efficiency. Vraen felt an almost spiritual resonance in the pattern, a sense that some unseen intelligence, the faint echo of God's quiet presence, was guiding the human's actions, shaping outcomes not through force, but through insight and subtle orchestration. The Terran voice returned, philosophical, almost gentle. "Every system has a heartbeat. Every network has a rhythm. You act blindly when you follow protocol alone. Learn to perceive, to anticipate, to act with purpose. Strength lies in comprehension, courage in clarity." Vraen's chest tightened. He realized the full weight of what humanity had done. They had dismantled the Empire's hubris without firing a shot, elevated its capabilities without claiming dominion, and challenged its leaders to recognize that courage was more than aggression. It was insight, creativity, and moral intelligence under pressure. Kale placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sir, there, teaching the Empire itself how to survive, not by weapons, but by thought, action, and collaboration. Vraen nodded slowly, all mingled with an uneasy tension. The humans had arrived not to fight, but to awaken, to demonstrate that survival and mastery lay not in control, but in understanding. Every pulse, every subtle adjustment, every moment of influence carried a lesson that could not be ignored. Then, the rehook, with a final, almost imperceptible pulse, the Terran ship extended a wave of energy that swept through the core and the city, harmonizing every system at once, and leaving the Admiral with one undeniable truth: humanity's presence was not temporary, not arbitrary, and not a threat in the conventional sense. It was a redefinition of power, courage, spics, and ingenuity itself. Vraen stared into the silent void where the Terran battleship hovered. We are not ready for them. And yet, perhaps, we have no choice but to rise to the challenge. The Imperial core was silent, not the tense silence before war, but the stillness that follows revelation. Systems hummed with impossible harmony. Orbiting fleets moved with mathematical grace. And far above them all, the Terran vessel, unarmed, unyielding, remained a quiet monument to human brilliance. Admiral Vraen stood in the observation deck, eyes locked on the stars. Every defense drone, every orbital weapon, every communication array now operated at peak capacity. Power surges balanced themselves. Systems predicted faults before they happened. The entire empire now functioned as if some divine algorithm had rewritten its heartbeat. Yet no one dared to speak the obvious truth. They had lost control and gained understanding. Across the deck, Kale whispered, "Sir, the humans haven't sent another transmission. Not a signal, not a demand, nothing. They just..." Watch. Vraen's reflection in the viewport was tired, but alive with awe. "They don't need to speak," he said softly. "They've already said everything that matters." Below, the Imperial Council gathered in panic. They debated war, diplomacy, surrender, but none of them understood what Vraen did. This wasn't conquest. It was a mirror. Humanity had shown them what they could be. They dared to abandon pride and embrace clarity. A voice came through the comms, not through their systems, topped within them. Every console, every screen, every frequency carried the sound. "Admiral Vraen." The voice was calm, steady, unmistakably human. "You have seen the demonstration. You have felt the harmony of understanding. Do you comprehend?" Vraen inhaled slowly. "I think I do. You've restructured our systems, not for domination, but for evolution. You've made us see what we could become." A pause. Then the voice replied, almost gently, "We did not restructure. We revealed. The potential was always within you. Humanity simply remembered what you forgot. That knowledge without empathy is chaos. Order without courage is slavery. Harmony requires will." Kale stepped forward. "Then why stop here? Why not finish it? Why not rule the Empire if you're capable of this?" A soft chuckle echoed through the air, warm, almost mournful. "Because mastery is not dominion. True strength lies in restraint. You feared that humanity would bring fire. We bring light." And then, in a voice that resonated like scripture, "We are the proof that the will to rise cannot be extinguished, not by tyranny, not by despair, not by the void." The Terran ship began to ascend. No propulsion signature, no engines, just silent motion, rising toward the upper atmosphere. As it moved, the sky shimmered with auroral light. Energy waves spread across the planet, touching cities, machines, minds alike. Wherever that light touched, systems stabilized, but so did hearts. Soldiers laid down their weapons. Technicians paused in wonder. Civilians stepped outside to see the heavens painted in human will, for the first time in recorded Imperial history. The core was united not by fear, but by awe. Inside the observation deck, Kale whispered, They're leaving. Vraen nodded slowly. They've already done what they came to do. The lesson remains. As the ship breached the exosphere, its hull shimmered patterns of light forming into words visible across the atmosphere. Not written language, but understood universally. Adapt, create, rise. The letters burned for a moment, then dissolved into starlight. Silence returned. But this time it was different. No longer hollow. It was alive with potential. Engineers rushed to study the harmonized systems. Scientists wept at the data streams. Philosophers debated what it meant for existence itself. And Admiral Vraen stood motionless, watching the fading glow. He finally turned to Kale and said quietly, "Do you understand now why they call themselves human?" Kale frowned. "Because they're different." Vraen shook his head. "Because they remember what it means to fail, to learn, to rise again. That's their power. Not their ships, not their technology. Their will." He looked back at the stars, the path where the Terran vessel had gone. "The gods do not speak anymore," he murmured. "But I think they listen. And perhaps they sent humanity to remind us why." Days later, the Empire's network remained flawless. No trace of Terran code existed, only new patterns of efficiency that no one could replicate. At the center of the core, a statue was erected, not of a ruler, not of a soldier, but of a human hand, open and reaching upward. At its base were the only words recorded from the final Terran transmission. "We came not to rule, but to remind you the stars do not belong to those who conquer them, but to those who dare to understand." And so the legend spread across colonies, fleets, and generations. A whisper of awe and reverence persisted. Humanity does not invade. Humanity illuminates.